Could you say a little bit about the ARC and what the focus of its activity is?
Well, the Agricultural Research Council is the country's premier agricultural research institution. We conduct research from crops to livestock and natural resource management. We have commodity-based specific research programs, and we have programs that cut across as well in terms of supporting the agricultural sector in general. But we don't end with the research. We see ourselves as having a critical role in making sure that the outputs from our research and development efforts are packaged and transferred to the agricultural sector. And that's why most of our work is done with partners in the agricultural sector to make sure that whatever technologies that we develop will lend very well in terms of servicing the needs of the agricultural sector.
Could you give us an example of a technology that you have recently developed and implemented?
Well, a technology that's recently been developed is our drought-tolerant maize seed, which was developed in the context of a wide public-private partnership, including several other countries in Africa. And this drought-tolerant maize seed has already been handed over for the benefit of the farmers in order for them to experience the technology. So that is one of the most recent technologies that we have developed. It has the technology has actually shown that even under drought conditions, you can still be able to generate the levels of yields that you are able to generate under non-drought conditions.
How was this private-public partnership set up?
This was set up with countries in Africa, the research entities in Africa, and it was supported by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. So there was funding that made sure that all the critical players in the identified countries have been involved, and not only research entities, but also to bring in seed companies and contribute to the development of small seed companies.
So it's clear that you work very closely with the people who are actually on the ground.
That's right. That is the whole idea. And in fact, what we have been doing recently now, as part of making sure that our work is integrated with what is happening in the agriculture sector, but also to work closely with the people, the ultimate users of the technologies that we develop, the farmers, is that we have a lot of trials, field trials conducted together with the farmers. You will perhaps also be aware that the ARC has other work that it does, for the agricultural sector in general, things like, cultivar trials, because we are the neutral body that is the scientific authority on some of these cultivars. We conduct these on behalf of the agricultural sector in general, so that they are able to see which ones are performing better under which conditions ahead of the planting season.
It's difficult to pin the ARC down because it's involved in every sector.
Yes, we are a broad organization with a broad mandate. We do a lot of work here in the Western Cape. We do work with deciduous fruits, with grapes. We do a lot of work for the wine industry. And that's how the ARC is organized. It's organized according to different agroecological zones in the country. You'll find that when it comes to tropical and subtropical crops, our focus will be on those crops in the Nelspruit area. When it comes to the work that we do on the grains, then you will find us where these grains are traditionally produced in the country. You will find the Small Grains Institute in Bethlehem. You will find the grain crops in Potchefstroom, etc., etc. So across the country, based on some of to make sure that the research that we conduct is actually done where these crops are also likely to thrive more.
Speaking, so heritage crops.
Sorry, what crops?
Heritage crops. Some of the traditional crops.
Yes.
Are you involved with projects that are also geared towards developing smallholder farmers?
Oh, definitely. This is a big part of our work. It's a big part of our work. We have a dedicated unit that's focused on smallholder agricultural development. There is a lot of work that is done on capacity development in that area. Some of our technologies are developed for the benefit of the agricultural sector, and we will also make sure that for some of the technologies that we develop, we find a way of extending access to the agricultural sector, perhaps even royalty-free. So some selected technologies, just to to provide that access. And our vegetable and ornamental plants research group in Rudeblatt has a lot of work on some of the traditional crops as well, and there's a lot of work that is being done, with smallholder farmers there.
Do you also help on the marketing side, or?
Yeah, well, we have, although the work of the ARC is obviously done with others, with partners, and we value these partnerships. While we don't necessarily on our own get involved in marketing the produce for the smallholder farmers, we provide the capacity, we train them in terms of how to be able to do that. So our capacity development efforts don't just end with production practices. We also take it beyond. We look at how to manage the business, but we also have a lot of work that now we are doing with the National Agricultural Marketing Council. In fact, we formalized our relationship with the National Agricultural Marketing Council last year by signing a three-way MOU together with the Land and Agricultural Development Bank of South Africa, which is going to help us to identify areas of intervention together, including what you are talking about. How do we assist some of the farmers that we provide capacity development to access the required markets? How do we help them to also be bankable, so that they can be considered positively by the land bank?
In the context of drought and climate change, would you say that it's necessary for farmers to begin shifting practices, perhaps towards conservation agriculture?
Yes. Climate smart agriculture, as we call it, is definitely taking a hold. And I was surprised in one of the farmers' days that we held in Bethlehem to learn of some of the stories that are coming out of the farmers themselves, sharing their own experiences with conservation agriculture, how they have been able to improve the yields, how they are able to conserve the soil, how they are able to just make sure that they are able to produce under these climate change conditions. You see, the two main key responses to climate change is you adapt and you mitigate. So they are mitigation. So conservation agriculture is part of the process of how do we mitigate the impact of climate change. But then you have to also look at how to adapt to the changing environment. Some of the projections from our colleagues at the Institute of Soil, Climate and Water are showing that in the next decades that we are facing, some of the traditional production areas are going to slightly change, and therefore you are going if we don't produce any different technologies or cultivars that are going to adapt to the changing conditions, we may have to develop new cultivars. We will have to perhaps if the requirement is that you have early maturing varieties, we have to see how we breed to meet those requirements. So there's going to be a lot of intervention from science to be able to deal with the impact of climate change.
How many years are you looking into the future for that?
Well, some of the models can go as far as 2090 to look at what is likely to happen. And I think some of the models are likely to go, even beyond that. Remember, a model is something that you put together to say, and this is based on historical data, of course, to say, if this has been the trend over the last 20, 30 years, what is likely to happen in the next 30, 40, 50 years? And that is the kind of,
with the change.
Yes, yeah.
The ARC has been promoting good soil use, good soil practices for years now. Are you glad that farmers are now picking up on this message?
It's encouraging. I think it's the only way we can have a sustainable agricultural sector. I think for the ARC that is the key in terms of the work that we do. How do we contribute to a sustainable agricultural sector that is also competitive? So if we start seeing the adoption of some good farming practices, and also some of the technologies that we develop being taken up by farmers, ultimately that's what will make us really happy. If you look at what the work that we do at the ARC as a research council, most of the work that we do is applied research. So a big part of what we do is applied research. So we do very limited blue sky research, if you like, but we do most of it to develop technologies that can be taken up by the agricultural sector.